Hello, everyone. Thanks for allowing me to come in. I really appreciate it. I was saying earlier, I actually live in this area, and it's very infrequent that I get to actually drive to speak. Usually I'm flying somewhere, so this is nice. Let's see. Okay, so the agenda for today, just a quick introduction of what Mattern does. Of course, thank you all for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you all. An overview of what's happening in offsite records, the most exciting industry in the world, right? I'm sure all of you are just anticipating this presentation. Then I'm going to talk to you about contract terms. So when you look at renegotiating your contract, things that you need to keep in mind, and really giving you a real life situation of how this can translate into what you're doing today. So Mattern, I'm not sure if everyone's heard of Mattern, but we are a consulting company. We are based in Pennsylvania. Our consultants are scattered throughout the US. And what we do is we do consultation specifically for law firms in an unbiased manner. And we run RFPs and back office services. So your devices, your offsite records, storage is one component of it, and administrative services. And what we do is we run this process and we use all the expertise from our consultants, and we have consultants on staff that have worked in each one of those industries. So we kind of know the ins and outs of those specific industries. That being said, like she said in my introduction, I worked at Iron Mountain for 9 years. I worked at Access for 2 years. So when I look at those contracts, I can redline all the stuff that they're trying to throw in there that you're not supposed to know about. And that's really what sets us apart from some of the other consultants. I see the shaking of heads, right? So again, we are unbiased, and we are always willing to do free benchmarking for you as well. So if you have a question whether or not your contract is lining up with the market, we do that completely free of charge. So what's happening in offsite records? First of all, I want to tell you there is a way out. And I know that not all of you believe this, because when I worked at Iron Mountain, I thought there's no way that any law firm will ever be completely digital, but I've seen it happen. And it's happening more and more as the years go on. So number one, your retention schedule is paramount. If you don't have a retention schedule that's outlining how long you need to keep things, and an information governance program that's backing that, it's hard to start that destruction process, right? And that's the key of starting to move away from the offsite storage. To make real progress with your rates and your terms, you have to get competitive. So what I hear the most is a lot of firms have those invoices come in and they don't really even look at them, right? They just pay them and they go on, and it is what it is. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to look at it or think about it. But the reality is all of you should go back to your offices today, pull that contract and see when it expires, because that expiration date, sometimes it will renew for a subsequent term of 5 years, 10 years. Sometimes it's just a year, but many times it's multiple years. So take a look at when that expiration is. Before you start to reach out, look at what your current terms and conditions are. Right now, you need about 6 to 12 months of negotiating runway to do the proper negotiations. So that means that even if you look at your expiration term and you think, oh, it's not till December, I've got plenty of time, we're in the middle of the summer. No, you need to start immediately. So when you think about that, one of the other things I hear is, I don't want to leave my current vendor because then there's this transfer of inventory and who's going to manage that, and it's going to be difficult. I can tell you that it is not a hard process if it's done correctly. We manage these all the time. If you're not creating that competitive situation, though, it's not putting your current vendor's feet to the fires to actually either, just give you a little increase, hold your rates, or sometimes even lower your rates. If they don't have any competition, they're just going to keep raising your prices year over year, sending you the Schedule A's and new rates. And once you get them, those are your new rates, unless you have terms and conditions built into your contract that outline exactly what the escalators can be. Transferring documents. We've done a very large firm that's based in Tampa. it was 700,000 cubic feet that we transferred one location to another for a storage vendor. So when I tell you we have the experience and it can be done, it's a very lengthy process, but it can be properly managed and done without any issues. And there's some key things that might pop up when you transfer material as well that I'll talk about a little later. Terms, they're more important than your pricing. And you might say, well, no, the pricing is always the most important. But if you don't have terms in your contract that say what your escalators are capped at, or what fees they can add throughout the contract term, I don't know how many of you have seen letters that you just get and they've now added another fee to your schedule that you don't even know what it is. It's just going to start appearing. Those are the types of things that you want to make sure in your new contract you're getting away from. And if you have any questions about what some of those fees are, I can definitely tell you what some of them are, so you can go back to your office and pinpoint exactly what those terms are. And there are ways on some of them that you can opt out. So they're no longer charging you month over month. But if you don't know about them and you don't know the caps, there's not, a pathway to change what's currently happening with your invoices. One of the things, if you are with Iron Mountain, reliting and reboxing. This is my little nugget for everyone. If you are getting invoiced for reboxing and reliting that you did not authorize, you should call them and tell them that you want to be notified and provide notification to them in order to rebox and relid. And also that you want the cap of 10 per month. It is something in their system. They will not advertise it. But I've seen part of my job is also to do invoice review on the back end, $4,000 in 1 month for a very small law firm, and reboxing that they did not authorize. So thankfully, we had that cap written in and we could go back and dispute that. Had they not had that, it's harder once it's already done. So make sure you make those calls to change what you're currently doing. Longer term contracts. So if you go out to bid, we have the ability, and you don't even have to have us involved to do this, other vendors will pay your termination cost in order to move all of your inventory to a new vendor. With that, if you have a longer term contract, that gives more space for that upfront cost that they're spending to be spread over the full term of the contract. So it's always better to look at 7 or 10-year terms to really take advantage of the pricing that you're negotiating and make sure it's going to last for a while, right? And then everything is negotiable. They might tell you, nope, these are our fees, this is it. I can assure you there's things that you can redline off of fee schedules. There are ways that you can, write in exactly what you want terms to be. There are destruction allowances that they will allow where they give you free destruction on an annual basis. You just have to ask. If you're not asking, they won't offer it up to you. So any questions so far? This can be interactive. It doesn't have to just be me. Nothing yet. Okay. Okay, so what contractual terms do you need? Okay, contract length and renewals. So in your in your contract, you should say what happens after it expires. Sometimes this is just left up to chance, right? It might renew, like I said, for another 5-year term, 10-year term. Make sure that you are saying what happens, and not only saying what happens, but what the escalators are going to be after that ends, because sometimes that 5 or 10-year term gets done and then they send you a price increase of 40%. If there's nothing in your contract that doesn't allow that, they can. With 30-day notice, most of these vendors can give you whatever pricing schedule they would like, and it will happen that 30 days later, those prices will go into effect, and those will stay into effect during your negotiation periods. And I saw some eyebrows raised when I said 40%. I can tell you 38% is some of the increases that I'm seeing after a 10-year contract, because they started out very low and now they're trying to bump them up for all of those 10 years. I also see storage rates all over the board, from 15 cents a cubic feet all the way up to $1.20 per cubic foot. I saw on a Schedule A that I reviewed. And it's just, the gamut of, it's the same space. That box takes up exactly the same amount of space, but the amount that they charge varies substantially. Storage minimums. So if you have a contract, there's probably a storage minimum that's written on it. You want that to be as low as possible, usually a couple $100s. Some of them have thousands of dollars on a storage minimum. And what that means is that if your storage starts to decrease below their minimum amount, they're going to continue to charge you that minimum fee, even though they don't have those boxes. So make sure you take a look at that. The payment of the permanent withdrawal process. So if you decide to leave and move from one vendor to another, there is nothing in your contract, usually, that says how much you have to pay up front. And I will tell you, as soon as you send them a request for termination, they will send you an invoice for the entire amount. It's usually $500,000 to $1 million. Sometimes it's millions, depending on how many boxes you have. So knowing if you ever think you might leave, and even if you don't, write those terms in there that say, we will give you a quarter upfront, and then we will pay you monthly as you transfer boxes, because then it's not an upfront expense for the firm. Performance standards, reporting penalties. So our thought is, if I order a rush delivery and you don't get me my file for my case tomorrow morning on time, you shouldn't pay for that. Unless there's something written into your contract that says what your service level agreement is, what the penalties are, they will not refund for that. And what we've seen is the industry, as they've moved past COVID, is that the number of employees that they have is shrinking. So they're starting to use third parties to deliver your boxes instead of delivering them with their own courier service. So you're also getting third-party service charges. If you don't have something in your contract that prevents them from using a third party, now your contracted rate of $10 or $15, or sometimes $30, $35, depending on your contract, for a next day delivery is now a lot more expensive because they're third-partying it. So something else to look out for. And then language addressing. Sorry, I have to move my thing. Language addressing additional charges during the term. So like I mentioned before, they send you a letter, 30 days later, you're getting a charge. I just saw one of the vendors, and I did a video on this, of a new, they called it like auto view of your boxes. So they automatically put a $99 charge, which is going to happen month over month over month from now on, unless you opt out. That they will go out to your box, take a picture of the contents, just a photograph, and send it to you. $99 a month. And I said, how are you charging for this? Where's the pictures? Have you taken the pictures? Have you sent them in? And they said, oh no, we don't send them unless you call us and ask for them. So I'm like, you're charging for a service that hasn't been rendered just in case they want to use it? And they said, yeah, because no one's looking at their invoices. That charge starts to happen, goes on. I was reviewing invoices for a firm based in California. $1,000 is what they were charged for this new service. And it was going to happen month over month over month. Because we caught it, now we've saved them that for the duration of their term. So that's why I want to stress, look at your invoices. Don't let them just go on. And then transfers we already talked about. Now with transfers, the terms that you need in your contract around transfers is, how are they going to happen? Because when I worked at Iron Mountain many moons ago, I won't say how many moons ago, but it was 1,000 boxes a week, right? Pretty standard, right? Now their standards around 200 boxes a week. So if you have 100,000 boxes, think about how many years it's going to take to transfer inventory. It's staggering. And if you don't have that written into your contract, then there's really nothing that you can do except try and negotiate, and it's really up to them. And their stance is, well, we just don't have the labor. This is out of our normal stance. We will only pull as many boxes as you typically have retrieved in the past few months. Well, most of our storage is dead, so we're not retrieving anything. So again, that's another term that you need to make sure that's in there. Any questions? Nobody has a question? Okay, we'll keep going. Oh, maybe. There we go. Okay, so alignment with your IG policy and your retention schedules. So as you start to try and get out of this hard copy, you need to remember electronic first mindset. So many firms are doing this. Anything new, you're scanning it. If you're scanning it, you don't need to send it to offsite storage. Okay, unless it's estates or original signatures or things that you have to keep the originals on, which should be in a vault location, right? But if you're scanning it, you don't need a second copy. If you bring a box back from storage, scan it, permanently remove it, don't send it back to storage, because we have done the math and we have determined that if you send that box back and forth a couple times, you should have just scanned it to begin with, and you're going to end up being dollars ahead. Okay. Also remember, permanently remove it, because if you don't permanently remove those boxes, you're still being charged storage at the vendor until you do. Another little tidbit, go run an inventory report of all your out boxes. If you have out boxes, and I've seen hundreds that have been out for years, that some attorney pulled them, put them in the back of his truck because he was leaving the firm and no one actually permanently removed them, the firm continues to pay storage until someone actually permanently removes the boxes. So electronic file becomes your official record. Make sure your RMS is the system of record for all those documents that you are digitizing. And then your records and information management policy needs to follow your retention schedule. So when I say that, a lot of times people say, oh, we have the retention schedule. It's just something that some attorneys aren't agreeing with. They're not giving us the sign off. Okay, this is very common. I hear it all the time. You have to create that committee, though, and have the champion that says, we're not doing this anymore. Because if one attorney keeps all their documents and another attorney says they're good to go, and then you get summonsed and you have some from one year and you don't have some from another year, guess what? It becomes a huge red flag and a liability for the firm. So if the records are meeting your retention schedule, get rid of them. It will also save you so much money for all those records that are just sitting there. I can tell you, you can probably draw a line in the sand, and this is another question we get frequently. There are so many old records, we don't even know what's in the boxes. How are we going to destroy them if we don't know what's in the boxes? We run surveys that ask these types of questions, and they're drawing lines in the sand that say, anything 10, 15 years old and back, we're just doing a blanket purge. And that's what firms are doing. We're going to assume that risk, because going through those boxes is also extremely expensive by the time you transfer them back to your facility, or you have someone that goes over to a facility. It used to be that you could go to use their audit spaces, and it was very economical. It was like $100 when I worked there. Now it's thousands. They charge project management fees. They charge labor fees to move the boxes back and forth for you, plus your retrieval, plus your refile, plus the hours that you were there. So first question, how many have successfully done it? Not many. Yeah, to get completely out of the records industry. And the main reason why they can't is because someone doesn't want to destroy the boxes. And I see lots of head shaking, right? Yeah. Yeah.
So you got to go
Yeah.
all the way to the top of the food chain to get it to happen. And we ended up in our monthly report, we had a big thermometer of how much was going. And I mean, it took a lot of effort to do it, but you got to have a champion at the top of the food chain. If you can't get Bill to do it, you're stuck.
But baby steps, right? Like, this isn't going to be done right away, but you have to start having the conversations. And I guarantee if you have the conversations and say, look at how much we're spending and look at how much it's increasing year over year, let's take a serious look at this. And that's where we get a lot of calls, right? Because we have, the background to know what we need to redline, what we need to put in new contracts. And like I said, free benchmarking. Send me your contracts and your invoices. I will tell you whether or not you are lined up in the industry or not. And sometimes our fees can be completely wrapped up into your new storage contract, which means that there's really no fee for us. And it's harder in offsite, I'll be honest, but if you have devices or you're outsourcing your administrative services, our fees don't cost anything because your vendor pays them. So there's really no expense. Yep.
Part two of my question.
Oh, yes.
Business plan for
Business plan. Yeah. They diversify. They have completely diversified their portfolio of what they do. So when I worked there many moons ago, we did shredding, offsite storage, shredding, and we did data protection. Now they have different offerings around office relocations. They're destroying server rooms. They're doing moves of offices. They are doing they're packaging their services different also. So the Access does this and Iron Mountain does this, where they will charge you a flat fee for their services, and that's inclusive of listing the files, doing the destruction, storage, and you pay a flat monthly fee over the 5-year or 10-year term, no matter how many retrievals or services that you do. So they're trying to bundle their services, and that, of course, is always in their benefit. So unless you start to destroy, which historically I can tell you, it's hard. But if you have the champion, that's where things start to change. But you have to have those numbers, right? And that's where, doing that analysis and putting those numbers in front of the right people in your firms, it will get heads that are shaking saying, wow, I had no idea what we were spending and we need to fix this. So, okay. Real life situation. So I'm just going to tell you about one that we did. This is a firm that is based in the Carolinas, and they had 3 different offsite storage vendors, 92,000 cubic feet of storage, and their contract was silent, meaning there was actually no terms relating to the service, the transfer process, the payment of per mount fees, escalations. They had almost $1 million of per mount fees that were going to need to be paid in order to move. The vendor with the largest inventory, they had concerns about the validity of the inventory. So how many of you have went to retrieve a box and they said, oh, we can't find that. Sorry, we're going to put that on a research, right? So there was boxes that they felt like didn't even exist. And that's one of the benefits of transferring your inventory, is because that scan and double scan happens from one box to the other, and you can figure out what's missing, right? So it's kind of a checks and balance system also. And no SLAs, no penalties, no required reporting. So benchmarking. Our benchmarking said that they were 38% over where they needed to be. And that didn't account for the per mount fees, of course, because we will get the vendor to pay those on your behalf. Termination fees were 50% higher than what we typically see in the market. So that was something else that we needed to negotiate. We created a competitive situation. We had all of the vendors bid on the business. Very compelling. When you, again, create the competitive situation where they're all fighting for your business, it becomes very interesting. We consolidated everything down so that there was only one vendor at the end. We transferred all that material with the new vendor picking up all of those fees. And we did the audit. How many boxes do you think out of what was 98,000 came up missing? Never found, ever. Any guesses? Is about 1,000, is 980 some. But if you think about 980 some boxes that they then were charged all that time, right? And what the vendors will say is, oh, well, that's not our fault because we acquired a company and they had a bad inventory. So they do lots of this. But again, $44,000 is what we saved by writing into their contract at the beginning that any box that you cannot find, you're going to pay us back for. So $44,000 we saved. Performance standards, we wrote them a 10-year contract. Savings were 30%. So about just $1 million, just $1.3 million over that contract term. And we did increases, 4% every other year, not every year. Every other year. Destruction allowance. So we said we want to be able to destroy 2,500 cubic feet every year at no cost. So you need to absorb that. And I will tell you, every vendor will say, oh, sure, no problem, because they think you're not going to do it. But then if you have someone like me in the background, I'm like, hey, time to send in that destruction report. I don't care. Find low-hanging fruit, anything you need to find, we're taking advantage of it. So they've been consistent about that. We wrote in performance standards, detailed termination process, should they ever leave in the future, how many boxes are going to be pulled, what the cadence is, how much they have to pay, etc. And then they also are doing something that's called a smart sort to identify contents. I don't know if anybody's heard of this, but this is just for one specific vendor where you identify a collection. They're starting with 12,000 boxes and they are pulling those boxes and they're sorting them based on destruction dates. And then that's going to shrink down their storage volume. And it's an all-inclusive project where they are categorizing what's going in the boxes, destroying things, and shrinking their inventory that way. And there's, estimated savings with that as well. So benchmarks, and this project was a couple years ago, so they have increased slightly, but this is benchmarks, and our benchmarks are ours. We do tons of RFPs. We do the analysis of what we're seeing in the industry with all the bids that come in. This is where our benchmarks were a couple years ago. And again, they've switched a little bit, but we can do yours exact for you if you send us your contract and invoicing. But this is where they were. And then formulating the strategy. So you're like, okay, all this sounds great. Now what do we do? Okay, so first of all, the information governance policy, retention schedules, that needs to be your first step. Okay, Mattern has an IGP on staff. You guys probably have lawyers that can help you with that. We've been hired by firms that just say, come in and help us implement it. We've already got it. We just need somebody, a third party, to help spearhead this, create steering committees, and get the buy-in that you need. That's the key. The executive sponsorship, steering committees, and also making sure that you have a change plan in process. Year one, we're going to do this, year two, and after the 5 years, we're going to be clean and we're going to make sure that this is implemented and updated annually. When you talk about records and digitizing, two approaches. So you either have the back file imaging, like I mentioned, when the boxes come back, image it, do not send that box back to storage. And please don't pull 1,000 boxes, image them, and send them back to storage, because I've seen that done way too many times. And it's just like, oh, well, we want to keep them just in case somebody asks. Don't do that. And also pull by the whole boxes too. If you just need a file, and this is another industry secret, pull the whole box. Because I can tell you from working in the industry that when your file comes out and then it goes back, it gets scanned and it says it's over here in this section, but it's not going physically back into your box until they find time to put it back in. So what happens is that your little file is sitting over there, and if somebody doesn't check to see what needs to go back in to pull that file, now you're getting a box that doesn't have the file in it. And I refer to those as orphan files because sometimes they get lost. And if they're understaffed, they might not make it back into the box for some time. So do yourself a favor. If you're pulling files today, change that practice and pull whole boxes. And then day forward imaging, draw a line in the sand. Everything from now on, we are going day forward to image. So again, best practices, the world is going digital. And the other benefit is, and I know everyone's like, don't say AI, but I will tell you, if you have a good repository and all of your stuff is getting imaged, you can then use AI to ask information about all of the information that you've digitized, and it will spit out results for you. If it's in hard copy, you can't do that. So that's just another benefit. And then obviously, create your offsite contracts with favorable terms and pricing, with terms being more important. So that is it. That is my presentation. Thank you.